What's going on? You're over there jamming out.
I am. I love that intro. Gotta talk. Do my little guitar.
Man,
how's it going?
Oh, going good. It's a special day. And what would you call it today?
New Year's Eve.
There you go. New Year's Eve. The eve of New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we figured we'd come out here on Saturday because we know everybody will be busy tomorrow, and we're going to be flip on here in a little bit. But before we did that, we want to talk to you a little bit. Gary's been in the back cave going through some things, and he's put together a couple little things. We're going to try some stuff. And so go ahead and explain, Gary, what you got.
We had been going live like on my profile. We'd tried some other stuff before. Our best result was through my Facebook profile. But what we wanted to do tonight was hit my profile, all four of these at the same time. We're live right now. My profile, Rodney's profile, the podcast page profile, if you want to call it a profile, and YouTube, all four of these at the same time. So we can still see the comments over here, and it's kind of going to give you your choice of where you want to watch at. And there's different goods and bads to whatever you decide. Like if you're watching through YouTube, if you're not logged into a channel, you won't be able to comment. And commenting is pretty important, and it's pretty fun, and we like to see it. So if you're watching through the podcast page, if you don't allow StreamYard to be in the back end of your Facebook page, then if you make a comment, you'll be seen as Facebook user. We won't see your name, but you can still comment. We can still bring up your comment, whatever. But if you're watching through Rod's profile or my profile, we're going to see who you are, just like it's always been. We've just opened the door a little bit to see how it's going to work. And I see Ron Rich is here, and we've got a Facebook user, and it's a good example right here. This Facebook user said, "Good evening, fellas." Good evening, whoever you are. You're seen to us as Facebook user, but and Keith Lopez is here. So
and Gary, just staying with that for a second. Yeah. I can see on my phone that's Marvin Jenkins.
Oh, the Facebook user.
Yeah, and so I'm on this profile. I see 5 on our deal right here in front of us. I see 24. So just some feedback.
Yeah, good to know. And actually, I want to.
Jeremy Wortman, that's who you are. Who am I?
Okay.
Wortman.
Got it.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, we got ready for the event.
Yeah, we got a pretty awesome guest here. And with the New Year's Eve, this is the end of Saturday nights. We're going to be back to Sunday after this special day. Scooter Rick. Hello, Scooter Rick. And I can't remember your last name, but Scooter Rick sounds awesome. So we'll go with that.
This will end the technical holiday edition.
Yes, the technical holiday edition. And what a awesome technical fella we have tonight.
Right on. Well, without further ado, let's bring him in.
All right. Here he is, Mr. Phillip Williams, also known as Flip.
Hey, guys. How you doing tonight?
Good, Flip. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Just relaxing down here in the basement in the man cave / office down here of mine. So,
how did you convince your boss to let you off work on a Saturday night to sit in front of the computer and goof off like this?
It was hard to convince him. He's really kind of a jerk, to tell you the truth.
Oh, he's a slave driver,
But, he's a slave driver. But
every time I go to this shop, you're busy.
Yeah, he was nice enough to let me off tonight. So
that's funny. So we'll get started here. I see you got some pictures in your background. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the first question that I wanted to ask was, how did you get the name Flip?
Well, it all starts with one person. His name is Neil Chance. Old man Neil, he gave me that nickname when I was probably 14 years old when I first met him. And I think he started calling me that because it was short for Phillip. And that was just the way he was. So, but yeah, Neil was the one who deemed me with that nickname, and it's stuck for this long now, almost 40 years. So
That's pretty cool.
And if you say your name, Phillip, really fast, Phillip, it's
Yep.
kind of rolls out as Flip.
Kind of rolls out that way. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to get started like we usually do, and I just want to take it to the left. I know you went to South High back in the day. I'm not going to say what age you are. I know who you kind of hung around with and that sort of thing. But like, what would be like what I would say is your first hot rod or your first go fast car, your high school car, however you want to say it?
When I was 16 years old, I bought a 1968 El Camino. It was a Malibu, Chevelle Malibu, all in that same family of cars or whatever. And it was pretty ratty. My brother used to say it had rust holes big enough in it you could stick your head through them. So, but it had a little small block in it. It wasn't nothing fancy. It wasn't nothing fast. It was just my daily driver. And, of course, drove the crap out of that car. You're 16 years old. It's kind of like a light switch. It's either your foot's all the way down to the floor or it's just idling. So,
yeah, right.
That was my first car, basically, or I guess you call it a truck too, because it was El Camino. But
that's right.
Yep.
That's cool. Now, did you take that car to the track or do any kind of?
No, I never took it to the racetrack. It was, like I said, it was just my daily. I didn't want to take it to the racetrack and break it because I wouldn't have nothing to drive. But to tell you the truth, that car, it had a power glide in it from the factory, and that is where I learned to build transmissions.
Right.
I met Neil Chance in 1983 from a family friend of ours. We actually went to church with him. His name was Scott Peterson, and he worked for Neil at the original shop down there at the 6311 South Seneca building. And when he first started working for him, I saw him one day. He was at our house a lot when I was a kid, and just a good family friend. And he said, "You want to see a race car?" I said, "Sure." So I got in his truck, and he drove me down to Hayesville, and Neil was down there working on it, and met him, and just fell in love fascinated with the car. It was an awesome piece. Of course, you're 14 years old, and you never been around that stuff before in your life like I had. I'd seen it on TV, but never seen it up close and personal. And that's just where it all started. Just from that day that we went down there and checked the car out. So
yeah, Roger that. So we can talk, just staying with cars for a second. Like, what was your first car you took to the drag strip?
First car I ever took to the drag strip I had a 1986 Chevy half-ton pickup.
Right on.
I took it to Wichita and entered it in Sportsman. And believe it or not.
What year was that? Ish.
That was in, oh, good Lord. That was in, I think it was in 1986, 86 or 7. And took it to the racetrack, entered it in Sportsman. The first time I ever pulled it up to the Christmas tree, I tried to stage it with the back tires. I tried to pull it right up to the Christmas tree. Of course, the starters, they're backing you out, telling you where to go. But that was the first time I ever went down a drag strip. That was at Wichita.
Wow, cool.
Now, telling stories before and that sort of thing, going back to Neil, is that how you learned how to start overhauling transmissions? Just hanging around?
I started working down there when I was about 16 years old, and I would work in the evenings. I was still in high school. I would work in the evenings, and sometimes on Saturdays we'd go down there. But I started out, I was sweeping floors, taking trash out, delivering transmissions to shipping docks, because back in those days we used to ship transmissions out all over the country. And that's just where it all started. And that particular El Camino I was telling you about, the transmission went out on it one day, and I didn't have a ride. That was the only car I had. Sure. So we towed it down to the shop on a Saturday, put it up on jack stands, and I pulled the transmission out of it and took it to the back of the shop, started tearing it apart. And Neil come in there and he says, "You want to learn how to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, get it apart. We'll get started." And he kind of showed me showed me a few things and showed me how to do, setup and assembly, and I had already tore a few transmissions down, but just the actual assembly part of it was new, of course, and that's where it all started. Stuck it back together, stuck it back in the car, and we were back on the road again. So,
Nice.
Do you ever wonder, like when he asked you if you wanted to fix that, if you'd have answered no? You ever wonder what your career path would have been?
Yeah, I've thought about that before. If I'd have said no or said no, I don't think I could tackle this deal. There's no telling what path I would have went down. So it's hard to say. I may have even followed in my father was a Wichita worked for the Wichita Fire Department for 20 years. Cool. And I may have followed his steps. I had thought about it when I was a kid, but it was just the fascination of the industry, the fascination of learning to do something. I never had any college training. Senior in high school, graduated high school. I went right to work. I mean, it was a few odd jobs before I actually started working down for Neil full time in end of 87, first of 88. So just jumped right into it basically. And it was no schooling, no training, just trial and error, learn from your mistakes. A lot of people helping you, showing you the way. A lot of people, a lot of good key people down there back then. So
was it a lot of stalker type passenger car builds?
Yeah,
or race car stuff
at first we did a lot of just factory rebuilds. Actually, one of the first, other than the Powerglide, one of the first transmissions I ever built for a passenger car was an old C6 out of a Ford, and I think we had it out of the car 4 times. So
just keep practicing on it, or what?
Yeah, just had to keep learning what you did wrong and learn not to do that.
No.
But, I did a lot of that, and then started kind of rolling into the race world after that and the race stuff. So
and they didn't have the stuff we have nowadays, with the input shafts, cases and drums and servos.
You build a race Powerglide back in the day. The Powerglide is the staple of racing transmissions. I mean, it's been tried and true in everything for years. I mean, even dating back to the 70s. And we didn't have good parts. We had stock cases, and we had, maybe a couple of aftermarket type input shafts, but nothing compared to what parts are today. Industry has majorly changed over the years. But back then it was just junk. It was all stock parts.
Had to fix junk with junk.
Exactly. I mean, you take a stock case Powerglide that's out of a 1967 Chevy pickup with a 6-cylinder, and General Motors never thought that they would ever see that go in a car that made 800-900 horsepower. So.
Stock 176 planetary.
Oh yeah, the old 176 planetaries, and we had trans brakes back then, but I mean nothing like it is today.
Right on. Yeah. So I seen you posted the little Vega. I remember when you were drag racing that thing. Let's talk about that a little bit.
I bought that car in 1996. I actually drove, me and some friends of mine, Johnny Mullins, and one of my good friends from high school. His name was Jerry White, and another kid that hung around us. His name was Merritt. We all jumped in I had an 88 Chevy Suburban with an open trailer, and we drove 7 hours to north central Arkansas to pick that car up. I actually bought it from a guy up there. It was not really a family friend, but he was somebody that we knew in that area because that's where my folks were from. Drove 7 hours to pick that car up. It definitely didn't look like that when I first bought it. It was black.
What color was it when you bought it?
And when it was black, when I bought it, had a big dent right behind the driver's door, where the quarter panel is, right below the rear window there. But I bought that car rolling. It didn't have nothing in it. I mean, no wiring. It was bare bones. It was a roller with a rear end and a drive shaft, and that was about it. So
yeah,
brought it home. spent a year working on it, stripping everything down, cleaning it up, rewiring the whole car. My brother rewired that whole car for me with one of those painless switch panels. Put a motor together. Actually got one of Neil's old motors from back in the day. It was old 427, iron-headed, iron block Chevrolet stock rodded deal with a old set of TRW pistons. Even had a flat tappet camshaft in it, and just put it all together, threw a carburetor on it, and we took it to the racetrack. I think the first time I ever took that car down the racetrack was April of '97. That was the first year that Wayne Roberts took the racetrack over out here. And I've got a video on that tape. I had posted that on Facebook. I've got a video of the very first pass I ever made in it. And my brother was videoing it from the back, and you can see all the way down the racetrack, there's grass growing through the cracks all the way down the racetrack from start line to finish line. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
97 was the first year I raced that car.
Well, I think I might have jumped the gun too a little bit. So let's go back to the left, Gary, and I think we got a picture to show there.
Yep. There's let me fix the screen here like this. And you got any stories about this, Flip?
I've got stories for days. That old man right there is, I mean, he's like a second father to me. This was probably 1985, 86 era. That picture was actually taken in Arc City on a Sunday. We went down there. That is me in that light blue colored t-shirt with my hand on the fuel cell. And the guy standing next to me without a shirt on, I'm pretty sure that's Marty Chance. And then his other brother, Doug, is beside him. But this is the car that got me interested in drag racing. Neil built that car in the 70s. I think 1970 or 71 was when he first raced that car. When he first raced that car, it had a clutch turbo in it. I don't know if you remember or have heard the term clutch turbo, but it was a turbo 400 with a clutch in front of it instead of a torque converter.
Okay.
They were violent, very violent when they shifted. That car would change lanes sometimes. Stories I've heard, I wasn't around back then, but in the 70s, he would take that thing to Wichita and dump the clutch on that thing, and it sometimes would change lanes on him.
Yeah.
But, Neil always ran big block Chevrolet stuff. He was a Chevy guy all the way. I mean, years ago, he worked for Bernine Chevrolet in Mulvane for a lot of years back in the 60s. And he always run iron-headed stuff back in the early days with the old Hilburn injectors on alcohol, old Vertex Magneto, just pretty simple stuff. Yeah.
Now, is this picture here, does it got a blower on it, or did you?
No, that is actually that was that 500 cubic inch motor he built. That actually had some really nice aluminum cylinder heads on it from Rear Morrison, and that was a tunnel ram deal with a hat injector on alcohol. It was not supercharged; it was just naturally aspirated. But
so this, what did this car here run? How fast?
That car there, if I remember right, that was a low 9-second, high 8-second car back in the 80s, and that was just a 468. Like I said, iron Chevrolet with a set of Hilburn mechanical fuel injection on it. So,
right on.
How fast was this one?
I think before he changed everything, I think that car ran some 830s back in the day, 820s, 830s on a good night.
Do you know where this is right here? What track you're at?
That's at Wichita right there. That is probably, I was going to say late 80s.
Right.
Mid to late 80s in Wichita. Neil's son, Doug Chance, he actually painted that car originally. The candy apple red and the candy yellow or gold colors that are at the bottom with that ribbon design on it. He painted all of that.
That is too cool.
Cool.
Yeah, they don't have wraps back then, you know.
No, there wasn't no wraps back then. It was all lay the paint down, you know. But that's some really good times back then.
Shelly and Kurt says AHRA days.
Yeah, AHRA days. We used to go to we'd go to Kansas City once a year, Tulsa once a year for the Spring Nationals, AHRA Spring Nationals. And they used to bring nitro funny cars. I mean, all the superstars were at those AHRA races. You know, Garlitz, Muldowney, Force. That's the first time I ever seen John Force was at Tulsa in like 85, I think, 86. Somewhere in there.
Kurt says Marty has it back.
Yes, that car is actually the body has actually been bought back.
Cool.
Marty found that body a few years ago with the help of our good buddy Mitch Brown, and had a new chassis built, and was actually trying to restore it and recreate the car, try to make it look the same as it does in this picture here, but it now has a supercharged early Hemi in it now instead of Chevrolet.
I got to see that when I was there the week before PRI, just walking around. And
the
talking.
car's in the back of Marty's shop back there right now.
Back. Good stuff there. Yeah, that brings back. So what do you think? What year do you think this picture is right here, Flip?
Probably 86, 85, 86, maybe 87, around in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Go to the Summer Nationals every year out here at Wichita. The Coke, they call it, some of them used to call it the Coke race. They'd bring some funny cars in, and sometimes you'd have some nitro cars show up. And that was one of those type of races to where when you was going home on Sunday, the sun was coming up as you were leaving the racetrack. So good times back then. All those guys like Neil and, Vern Holzman, Larry Nail Sr., they raced with Vern Holzman, all those guys. Those are the guys that I remember growing up watching race locally here, guys that had all those fast cars. Jim White was one of them. His little EXP he had. It just good times, good memories.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you just took a page there. You're talking about Neil and Vern Holzman, just some of the legends around here when I was growing up, going out to the track and watching that, or this car, Vern's Javelin.
His AMX. Yeah. Good times.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Neil and Vern Holzman had a match race one year out here at Wichita, the Summer Nationals race. It was like a best 2 out of 3. That's when Vern had that. That was a Oz Calais or Calais, however you pronounce it, body on it. Vern used to he ran a clutch for years, a Lenco on a clutch in his car. And it was a small block, and they had a best 2 out of 3 match race. I remember that very well. That was a good time that night.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Those two, Neil and Vern Holzman, they raced with each other for years. I mean, you go back to the, late 50s, early 60s. When Wichita first opened, they raced together every weekend for a lot of years.
Wow.
Next picture.
You want to see the next iteration of the Corvette is?
Yeah, that's
right
what
there.
it changed to in end of the 80s. Neil decided he wanted to. It'd get kind of hard for him to get in and out of that funny car, because that funny car was not a center steer car. It actually sat left to center like a regular car does, and it was kind of getting a little difficult to get in and out of it, I guess. But he decided to change it up, and he bought this that was an 88 Corvette body. He spent a lot of time fitting that body on that chassis and doing a lot of cutting and refiberglassing, and same engine in that, but he added nitrous to it in those days. This picture here was taken at Tulsa at an IHRA national event. It says right there, Grand American Nationals. This was in probably 92, 3 era. We actually took it down there and ran Top Sportsman. That was when that was before Pro Mod was even around. They called it Top Sportsman back then. They had a quick 8 shootout on Saturday. They took the 8 fastest qualifiers and ran them on Saturday night, and then on Sunday it was a dial-in bracket race type situation for Top Sportsman. You actually had to put a dial-in on the car, but he had nitrous on this car. Not from the get-go, but it was added later, and he did some suspension work to this. It changed. This car was actually a ladder bar car, in its early stages, and changed it to a 4-link setup a couple of years later. But that car went some 790s at almost 180 in the quarter, you know, and that was 540 cubic inch deal. I mean, that we thought that was a big motor back then, you know. Nowadays, that's what you get in your pickup that you drive off a showroom floor. So
that's the truth.
Yeah. Good times.
Got a request here.
Yep. Mitch Brown, he says, tell the weenie water story.
The weenie water story, yeah. Well, I mentioned before, Neil and Vern, they raced a lot together back in the early days, back in the 70s. And Neil told me a story about one night. They were at Wichita racing one Saturday night, and Neil didn't have anything to drink. He didn't have a cooler or something with him. He was really, really thirsty. And they were getting ready to pull up to the staging lanes or something along those lines. And he walks over to Vern's trailer and says, "Vern, do you have anything to drink?" He says, "I'm parched." Vern said, "Yeah, I got a thermos in the back seat of my car, and there's got water in it. Grab that and take you a swig." And he said he picked the thermos up and just chucked it back, and it had hot dogs in it because he put hot dogs in a thermos, got a big old swig of what we call weenie water, and spit that out all over the ground. So that's one of my favorite stories he told me back years ago.
Oh, man.
Good times.
Yeah. Neil was he was a practical jokester, and antagonizer, but in a fun way. Would always be pulling pranks on people, doing stuff. He was a good man, honest, straightforward, good Christian man. Taught me a lot, not just transmissions, but a lot in life too. Because, I seen the other day on Facebook that they tore the old Town and Country restaurant on West Kellogg. They tore that building down because it's been closed for a while. We had a lot of Saturday morning breakfasts at that restaurant. Me and Neil did a lot of them. He would call me on Saturday morning and say, "Meet me over there at 9." We'd go head over there and eat breakfast. And kind of sad when I saw they was tearing that building down. I got a lot of good memories in there. But he was a practical joker. Like I said, our old shop on 6311 building over there on South Seneca, the water in that area was terrible. It was full of iron, and it would turn everything orange. You did not drink it. And the bathroom in that shop, the toilet would turn rusty orange color even after it was cleaned after a couple days. One day, my building area, trans building area, was kind of back there by that bathroom. And one day he come back there, walking back there with a big old long screwdriver, and he's just laughing. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it." He goes in that bathroom and shuts the door. He's just in there for a couple seconds. He comes back out, and he's just hee-hawing and giggling. I walk in that bathroom. He had scribed my name in the rust in the bottom of the toilet with that screwdriver. just because, that's just the way he was.
Did he scribe Phillip or just Flip?
No, it said Flip in the bottom of the toilet. Yeah, in the rust. Yeah,
he was saying that was your office. That's what's going on there.
Yeah. Because I got the bad. I had to be back by the bathroom back there, so I got the bad part of it. But
yeah,
Marty Chance had a rear engine dragster. I helped him work on it quite a bit when we were kids. We were teenagers. I was 19, I was 18. And we would be down there at the race shop working on that car, putting stuff together. We'd stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning working on things. And the next morning, Neil would come to work or come to the shop, and he would go over there and look at it. And everything that we had put on that car, if we were welding tabs or whatever we were doing to it, he would look at it and go, that ain't going to work. Change that. No, that's going to get you killed. Change that. And so me and Marty would just stare at each other like, man, we worked our butts off on this. We were down there. I'll just tell you how he was off the cuff with some things. We were down there one night on a Friday night real late, and him and Marty's mom had been out eating dinner, and they stopped by the shop to see what Marty and I were doing. we were talking a few things, and he was getting ready to leave. And right before he left, he opened the door to the race shop, and he turned around and looked at me and Marty. He goes, "Boys, just remember one thing. People cause accidents, but accidents cause people." And just turned and walked out the door. And that was another Marty and I looking at each other going, "What? Where'd that come from?" So it's just the way he was.
Message there.
Oh, man.
Yep. He was, he's the main reason why I has pretty much stuck with this industry for almost over 30 years now, because he just, like I said, just good man,
Sure.
Good person.
Oh, that's great stuff. And you make a good point in how he's touched everybody in different ways and throughout the, in racing or just locally in the community. Great stories to talk through. And I know you worked with him for quite a while there. And how many years did you have at Chance?
I started there in 87, and I actually left for a while. And right at the beginning of 1990, I went to some different, worked a couple of different jobs because of some circumstances. And I came back to Chance in 92. Neil retired completely 100% in 95. And then his other son, Doug, that was still in the business, retired in the late 90s. And Neil's son-in-law and his grandsons are the ones that own the shop now. And I worked for them up until 2 years ago when I left there in 21. So, yeah, worked there quite a few years. So.
Oh, good run. Yep. Learned a lot. And so let's just talk about your shop real quick. Like, I got a 400 behind me, and I want to bring it to you so you can get it done by next week, or what are we talking here?
Yeah, right now I get it done about next month. So
he obviously has a bunch of spare time. He's here hanging out with us tonight.
Right? Yeah, I should be out in the shop right now, but I just got to have a break every once in a while. I did a lot of. I had other shops. I still had a full-time job for a lot of years, and then I rented some buildings from some other people. Well, when I first met you, I had a shop on South Hoover.
Yep.
That was the first shop that I had rented, working out of in the evenings and on the weekends. And I did that for a lot of years. I work all day there and go to my shop in the evenings and build the race stuff. And I did that for a long time, a few different places. And my dad got sick in 2021. And we moved out here out here where we're at now in Rose Hill in 2018. And we kind of, one of the purposes of doing that was my parents, we all lived here together and wanted to be able to take care of them because they were getting older, and in case something happened. Well, my dad got sick, and for 7 months, my mother and I and my wife and we all helped as much as we could anyway, take care of my dad until he died in September of 22. And when he got sick, after he got out of the hospital, that was when I decided that I needed to be here all the time. So, and it was getting to the point where I was so busy that, but my dad getting sick just elevated that. So I decided it's, I'm 53 years old. It's now or never. So I went ahead and just kind of jumped in with both feet, just did it. And I cannot tell you guys how blessed that I have been since I did this, because it's overwhelming some days. I'm a one-man band. I do the work. I make the quotes. I call people. I go to the parts store. I get supplies. I have to do it all. And it's a big task. Sometimes it's 10, 12, 14-hour days. But I enjoy it. They always say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That's kind of saying, it's just something that I've done my whole life, and I'll do it until they put me in the ground. So
How far outreach does like your customer base, like surely Oklahoma, Missouri, the surrounding states probably?
Yeah, I've got customers in Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri. Got a couple in Arkansas. I have built some transmissions and shipped to Ohio before. A guy that actually used to live in Wichita, he was in the military and moved to Ohio and built one and shipped it to him. So, but it's local. It's really more local than anything else.
Yep.
Yeah. I have quite a few customers in Oklahoma. Some of the guys that run Funny Car Chaos series. Phil Cook is one of them. A guy from Norman, Oklahoma. His name is Steve Bang. He has a funny car. The Bauska family from Wellston, they have they're building a new car, getting ready to, but they had a more of a heads up kind of drag and drive type car Camaro that they ran. So
it's a green Camaro, right?
Yep, green Camaro. Yep.
Okay. 67, 8, something like that.
68 Camaro, I think it was, had a Vortec big block in it. Vortec supercharger.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you put how many trainings you've done?
More than 2. Thousands. I mean, it's a bunch. Yep.
Yeah.
Whitney had something to say here. She says, I know I speak for the entire family. We are so proud of you, Flip. You are one of the hardest working guys out there.
Oh, thanks, honey. I appreciate that, Whitney.
Yeah. That's
I
awesome.
I try hard.
It's funny too. I remember a few years back at Wichita, I saw these people wearing shirts, and it'd say like, I'm Flip's dad, I'm Flip's mom, I'm Flip's brother, I'm Flip's something like that. You know,
we were racing a heads up race out there one Saturday night, and we used to kind of have this running joke. My brother and I had this running joke together that nobody knows. He would say, nobody knows my first name. All they know me by is Flip's brother. Because people will walk up to him and go, hey, aren't you Flip's brother? So he goes and has a bunch of these T-shirts made, and they all say, like Flip's brother, Flip's dad, Flip's son, so on and so forth. And they come out to the track that night. I was under the car because we had broke something. I cannot remember exactly what it was at the time, but
what car is it?
That was with Neil's 55 Chevy.
Okay.
Yeah. I drove it 04, 05, and 06. He traded for it. But they come out there that night and had all those T-shirts on and were standing with their backs to me so I could read them. And I was just like, you know what? It just makes your heart drop when your family's like that, because my family has been very supportive of me, all of them, through my whole career. And, family is everything. So
absolutely.
Yeah. My wife, especially my wife, because we've been married for 25 years and she has put up with a lot.
Sure.
Me working a lot, not being home, and she's still here. So
right. That's awesome.
That says a lot. Yeah.
You mentioned the 55. Let's talk through that. How did that start?
That started out the Corvette, the black 88 body Corvette. Neil had decided that he wanted to get something different. So he traded the Corvette for this 55 Chevy, roller for roller. I actually drove to Mustang, Oklahoma and picked this 55 Chevy up for him.
Cool.
Took his Corvette down there and traded it for this roller for roller. And he actually had traded for this because he had the intention of he was going to sell this 55 Chevy when he got it back, because he was wanting to get out of racing. He was getting older and he was ready to be done. Well, I loaded this 55 Chevy up on a trailer and we're cliffing it back to Wichita. And the whole way back, I'm thinking, well, if he wants to sell this, man, let's figure out a way to buy it. Because I fell in love with this car the first time I saw it. I just absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, it was street legal. It had turn signals, brake lights, but it was just a neat old car. It was a back half car, back half big tire deal, had a funny car cage in it.
Lots of steel.
Yeah, lots of steel. This was an all steel. The only thing fiberglass on that car, I think, was the front bumper. And the hood was fiberglass too. The rest of it was had all the original glass in it. So I'm coming back down the turnpike thinking, yeah, I'm going to own this thing. As soon as I pull into the shop driveway and he comes out and looks at it, he goes, well, I think I'll keep this. So I didn't get to buy it from him.
It saved you a bunch of money.
Yeah. So he put a motor together for it, and we put a turbo 400 together for it, stuck it all together, and took it to Arc City, I believe, and he made a pass in it. He made a couple passes in it that day. Had a 14-inch tire under it, I believe. And then he decided he wanted to put nitrous on it. Okay. So he put a nitrous system on it. I believe it was a plate system. I'll tell you, we'll date some stuff. You guys remember Top Gun nitrous systems?
Oh,
yeah.
That had a Top Gun plate on it.
Yeah.
If I remember right. And we took it out to Wichita, and he made a couple more runs with it.
Will blow your mind, not your motor.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a T-shirt. I had a Top Gun little fogger nozzle kit on my '88 Trans Am.
Yeah,
and he sent John was his name, and he sent a T-shirt. And it was
John Stewart.
John Stewart. We'll blow your mind, not your motor.
But about this time, Marty had his Mustang for a while, I think, before Neil got this 55. And Neil decided to put nitrous on it, and we raced it at Wichita and went to Arc City a couple times. Well, Ozark Raceway Park in Rogersville, Missouri, they had a once-a-month heads-up shootout.
Right.
And we would go down there once a month. It was usually the first Saturday of every month. We would go down there once a month and take the 55, Marty's Mustang, and a guy that worked for Marty, his name was Heath Blanky. I don't know if you guys remember him or not.
Sure do.
Oh, yeah. Heath was from Hayesville. He had a Camaro, a later model Camaro, F-body, I think is what it was. It had a Pro-Charged small block in it.
Yep.
And we would take all three cars down there, and Marty had a stacker trailer with a lift in it, and we put all three cars in that trailer, and we'd go down there, and that was the best times I ever had racing in my entire life. We had so much fun together. That car, the 55, ran Outlaw 10.5 is what the class we ran at Ozark, and Marty and Heath ran a radial class, and Marty ran the small tired slick class. I think it was called Super Street, something along those lines. But we had really good times back then. And then Neil decided he wanted to put a Pro Charger on this car.
There you go.
So he took the nitro system off, and he bought a it's the Dinosaur now, but it was a D3M Pro Charger for it. That was a blow-through carbureted deal. Ooh. No intercooler whatsoever.
Dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly.
Carbureted.
Carbureted on gas, no intercooler. He put that deal together. We took it to an engine dyno, and I believe it made right at about 1,300 horsepower.
Nice.
And it was on about 20. I think we would spin that thing about 22 pounds of boost, somewhere around in there. And in that heavy boat, that car weighed 3,875 pounds with me.
Woo.
And it ran 580s at about 120 in the eighth. And at Wichita, I think the fastest we ever went in a quarter was a 920 at like 155. And that car had drum brakes on the back of it still. It had disc up front and drum brakes on the back. So Neil put a parachute on it because it was really hard to stop on a quarter-mile track.
Sure.
And he just asked me. He told me one day, he says, "It's your turn to drive." I said, "Okay." So we started racing it together till 2007. The last race we took that car to, we went to a Clash of the Titans deal in Tulsa in 2007 and ran the Pro Street class. The Pro Street class in Clash of the Titans, Freddie, the guy who ran that deal, he liked to run 8th mile for the Pro Street class because it was for a class for heavier cars, back half type cars. And we ran some 8th mile stuff with it in Clash of the Titans also. But actually blew the engine up at that 07 race in Tulsa. It broke a lifter and sent it through the block and destroyed the cam. And it just, it was terrible. And that was the last time the car was raced. Neil took it home, took the motor out, and he built a pump gas big block for it and put it back on the street.
Yeah.
Actually, I was at my shop one Saturday when I was on Hoover, and it was in the summertime. I had all the doors open, and I kept hearing something thumping coming down Hoover Road. I knew something healthy was coming down the road. And all of a sudden, I hear this car just screaming down Hoover Road. And, Neil's in his 70s at this time. And here he come in the parking lot with this 55 Chevy, and he pulls up in front of the shop, and he goes, "Come on, let's go for a ride. I got the new motor done." Here he is. Me and him are out on Hoover Road making a pass on a Saturday afternoon, and he's set, in his 70s. I'm in the passenger seat. We're just like a couple of kids, Just, oh man, I used to call Hoover out there where the shop was Hoover International Raceway because it was usually Friday and Saturday nights or street racing going on out there. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Put it back on the street. And Marty actually still has this car today. He still has it at his shop.
Right.
He won't sell it to me. So.
Yeah. He was talking about, racing down in Springfield and Kurt says down in Springfield where Neil chipped his tooth from the wheelie.
Yes, he did.
What happened there?
I think it still had the nitrous motor in it. There's a video of that on Urban Hillbilly videos. That guy named Sean Melton that used to do all that video going down there. Neil was driving it one night down there in Springfield, and it had the nitrous motor in it. And when he let go of the button, that car stood straight up in the air on the back bumper. And when it came back down, it chipped his tooth. Oh, when it hit so hard, it bent both front wheels, and we didn't know they were bent because the next time the car was raced, I got in and raced it, and I went through the finish line at Springfield, and the steering wheel came out of my hand. It was shaking so hard because we didn't know the front wheels were bent, and that was the last pass he ever made in that car when he chipped his tooth like it. But it did. It stood. That heavy boat stood straight up in the air. That was crazy.
It looks like it has exhaust hanging on it coming off the side.
Yeah, they had that side exhaust on it with old school Flowmasters on it.
Oh yeah, Masters.
That was a ladder bar car. It had a 9-inch Ford with ladder bars. That's why it left like that all the time. I mean, we didn't have a two-step on that car or nothing. We put it to the wood and let go of the trans brake button.
You raced some MSRA with this, right?
Yeah, we did some MSRA stuff. I think we went to Thunder Valley with it one time, if I remember correctly. Racing that. I don't know if they called it Outlaw 10.5 back then. We always had a W tire on it, though.
Right.
That car would we would either put a W tire on it or put a 14-inch slick on it. So
there you
go. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times. I see a lot of people in the back there. I can recognize a lot of people back there. So
yeah, that's Kurt's back there behind the car, and if you look to the right there's the big guy with his arms crossed there. That's my brother. Yeah, he was always on the starting line every time I went down the racetrack. He was always there.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. I don't know. I was going to mention too. You were talking about when you met Gary at the Hoover shop.
Yeah.
I know that we'd be in different circles and that sort of thing. And I remember meeting you one time, and you were in a different 55.
I guess I don't remember. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think you was that West Street? Yeah.
Yeah.
We raced one night. I think that's one of the first times I ever met you, Rod. We were down on West Street racing, and Ray Hare had a primered 55 Chevy with a big block nitrous combo, and you had your purple car.
Right.
And you and him hooked it up on West Street one night, and that was one of the closest street races I've ever seen in my life. He actually I think he came around you or like right at the finish line or something.
Yeah, he got me.
Yeah, that was when I first met you down there.
Yeah,
that was
a time. Yeah.
Yeah, you were. I think you worked at Rusty Egg Ford.
Yeah,
back in those days, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time. And that was the first time I met you guys, and
Yeah,
that was a good race. Very good race.
Yeah, good times.
Crazy.
Do you miss driving a race car?
Yes, I do miss driving a race car.
I mean, like okay, so you raced bracket and you raced heads up. Which did you like the most? I
preferred heads up racing, and the only reason I preferred heads up racing is because I was not any good at bracket racing whatsoever. I never picked it up. I did it I raced the Vega for almost 4 years, and I just wasn't one of those type of people who got enough seat time, I guess. I went to a semifinal round one night, and I went to a final one night at Wichita, and that was about it the whole time. I won more money and went to a couple final rounds in more racing this 55 Chevy heads up with Neil than I ever did bracket racing. And I'm not knocking bracket racing whatsoever. I love, if it's got four wheels and a motor, I love it. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a Ford, Chrysler, whatever. But I just wasn't ever any good at bracket racing. So I tended to be more towards the heads up. So if I could race today, if I could afford it, had the money to do it and race today, I would rather do something like the small tire, either the small tire deal or some kind of pro mod, one of the two.
Sure.
Like small tire stuff, would you have like an old hot rod like this, or like
it would be a 55 Chevy, yes.
Cool.
But it would be a lighter 55 Chevy, yeah. Yeah. It would definitely be that. And sorry guys, but it would have a Pro Charger on it. I'm not a
That's
turbo
fine.
guy, so
That's all right. Good. Good, very good.
That's cool.
Pro Chargers.
Yep.
Pro Charger and some zoomies.
That's right.
That's cool. That's good memories there. And and so I don't know if you caught that, Gary, but Mitch Brown just chimed in on something.
I see that. Mitch Brown says you love two wheels also, and he's talking about motorcycles. Flip does the best funny bike impression ever.
Mitch was first. When Mitch, I don't know, a lot of people don't know this, but Marty Chance and me and Mitch Brown all used to live together a long time ago, back in the early 80s. And Mitch was first racing. He had I think it was a Suzuki GSXR 1100. I used to go racing with Mitch a little bit. He had a bike. I don't think it was his. We went to a race in Temple, Texas one time on a weekend, just kind of on a whim. Curtis Sexton was his friend, and there was another guy, and I can't remember his name. We took the bike down to Temple, and Mitch was riding it. But Mitch was always wanting to get on a funny bike, one of those turbocharged, fast, big tire bikes. And we used to watch him on television. I'd do this impression of a funny bike, and he'd get a kick out of that. And Mitch Brown and I used to do nitrous. Mitch had a nitrous oxide business. He actually bought it from Pat Daniels, if you guys remember that.
Yeah, AMX.
It was called Midwest Nitrous. And Mitch was a dealer for NOS, and I did refills out of my apartment that I had on South Seneca. We would go get a cylinder and carry it down the stairs in my apartment, which was highly illegal and very dangerous. And I'd throw a 10-pound nitrous ball in my freezer and freeze it and do refills for guys out of my apartment. That didn't last very long, but we did that for a while. And,
oh my goodness,
had some good times back then for sure. Yep.
That's cool.
Marty was, it was probably 1986 or 87. Marty and I went to Kansas City, KCIR, to race his dragster. Marty had an old Ford pickup, 4-wheel drive Ford pickup, and we towed his dragster on an open trailer. It was a real long open trailer. And we were broke, poor. We had no money whatsoever. And we were coming back on a Sunday afternoon from KCIR, and we ran out of gas on the turnpike. I mean, I had a couple bucks, and he maybe had a couple bucks, but we were nowhere near a gas station. So we had 10 gallons of alcohol in the back of the truck left over from the race car. We poured that in the gas tank, spit and sputtered all the way home, and made it home on the rest of the alcohol we had. So,
holy cow.
You know, we're sitting here talking about the good old days and that sort of thing. And I know you know what's going on current in like small tire and pro mod. Like, let's talk about that for a little bit. Where do you see, I mean, you know what's going on. Where do you see things going in the next couple of years in small tire?
Well, just like, you know, the other guys have talked about before, you know, if you look at a small tire deal, like a legal X275 car, or I guess you want to call it legal trim, Kenny Hubbard has one of the fastest X275 cars in the country. You'll see a 3-second pass out of one of these cars eventually. I know you will. I mean, if it hasn't already happened, then I didn't know about it, but it's just the way that technology has changed so much, and as much power as these cars are capable of making, and power management on top of that as well. These cars are just going to continue to get faster unless somebody puts a cap on it. You know, I don't really see that happening, but I mean, it could. It's the same in the transmission world. You know, like I said before, you know, in the early days, we just ran junk. We had no good parts, no aftermarket cases, no, you know, billet this, billet that. And the industry has changed so much. Just for instance, like a Turbo 400. Turbo 400 is one of my favorite transmissions because it's so versatile. The Power Glide, like I said, is tried and true. It works, but you're limited on gear ratio. You're limited on input shaft size. To where a Turbo 400 is more versatile in gear ratios, whether you run a close ratio 3-speed or a 2-speed, you know, input shaft sizes all the way up to 1.25 inches. If you need to be, if it's like a pro mod car or a screw blown deal or something. And plus the way that you can manage a transmission nowadays with converter charge pressures, all of the neat gadgets that we have nowadays that we didn't have 30 years ago. I mean, you know, you guys remember back when we first started racing 30 years ago, we didn't even have data loggers. And you look at it today, how did we race back then without a data logger? We pull a couple of spark plugs and look at them, go, oh, it might be rich, lean, whatever. So let's do that, fatten it up, change the timing, whatever. And I just don't know how somebody can race without a data logger.
Back then, you had to remember what your butt was telling your brain was going on.
Exactly. You had to actually know what the car was doing going down the racetrack. And but just part of the same with like I was saying with transmissions, the technology has changed so much. One of the biggest changes here recently with the Turbo 400 was the introduction of this Smart Tech drum module that Sonics has put out. To not try to get too technical if somebody doesn't know what I'm talking about, but the Turbo 400 has worked the same since its inception, to where it spins the forward clutch drum one direction, it spins the direct clutch drum another direction, and then when it makes a shift, it has to stop that direct clutch drum immediately to make the 1-2 shift. Well, all that inertia, all that kinetic energy that's going through the transmission at the time at high RPMs, it just comes to an abrupt halt when it makes a 1-2 shift. And then when it makes a 2-3 shift, it releases that direct clutch drum. It spins it with the input drum, and you have to build that kinetic energy back up to motivate the car down the track. Well, what this Smart Tech drum module does is that it puts all the kinetic energy into the clutch instead of the drum spinning because of the design. To try to explain it the best I can, there's some videos that Sonics has on their website that show you the function of it, how it works. But it's a game changer in the transmission industry because it takes all of that wasted kinetic energy that is built up that gets abruptly stopped and changes it dramatically, almost 60% difference. It weighs 3 pounds less than the lightest aluminum drums that are available on the market. It's a killer design, and it's a game changer for that, because you're going to see increased ETs, you're going to see better 60-foot times. Anytime you can take rotating weight out of anything, I don't care what it is, if it's an engine, a torque converter, especially in a transmission, if you can take rotating weight out of anything, it's better for your whole program. So that's some of the things that technology has really changed the game with stuff. There's nothing wrong with the Power Glide. I'm not knocking a Power Glide. A Power Glide is, in my opinion, is still a killer piece. But a Power Glide would be more for like in a bracket type situation where you want the consistency of the car every pass. Mm-hmm. You want it to run the exact same number every pass. Well, like I said, with the Turbo 400 in a power added or heads up type situation, there's so much versatility with gear ratios and the ways that you can run it. It's just better for that type of racing than it is for bracket racing. So
that Sonics deal for the 400 you're talking about, what is the availability? You've got my attention the way you're talking about that Sonics deal, and I've got a 400 on the floor over here. Mm-hmm. What's the availability of that part?
It's very available.
Okay.
They first came out with that in last year. I think they introduced it at PRI show last year, but it had been in the works for quite a long time. They first tested it in a prototype deal in a No Prep Kings car, blown or pro-charged Hemi No Prep car. And I do know for a fact they put 50 to 60 runs on it and didn't have a single solitary failure with it. They did make a change to it after that first prototype, but since they've introduced it on the market, yes, it's very readily available. You can get those, no problem. So, it's just gear sets you can't get right now. So.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
What were they running for one of those clutchless hub smart technology?
The Smart Tech clutch module is right around $3,000, and then you have to buy an input shaft that goes with it as well. They come in a 1-inch design and an 1 1/8 design, but you have to use Sonic's input shaft because of the setup, the way they've designed it. There's not anybody else's input shaft that will work with it at this time, but in the inch 125 input shaft on a Turbo 400, if it'll live behind a pro-charged Hemi deal, it makes 3,000 horsepower. You're good to go. So,
yeah.
It's real. I have ordered probably since they came out with it. I have had probably 3 of them total. I've actually got one ordered waiting for a customer with a funny car that's going to be bringing stuff up this winter to change it, but they haven't ran these transmissions yet that I put the Smart Tech modules in, but it's definitely a game changer for sure. So
very good.
It's expensive, but this whole sport's expensive.
What isn't, right?
Yeah, what isn't expensive? So
you was talking about, back in the old days it was a stock case stuff, and now we got a variety of, you get a reed case or whatever case available. So you had my transmission in your shop. This was like COVID had put a stranglehold on a lot of stuff, and I remember you and I was talking about getting a hold of parts, and you had mentioned this case that was coming out of Jegs or Summit or some place like that was a off-brand deal. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
okay,
it was an off-brand. It was kind of a digitized copy of a reed case.
And that's been a few years ago.
It's been quite a few years ago. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It was Chinese built, Chinese made. And
so is it a piece of junk? I mean, it's a few years into it now. Is it a hunk of junk?
It's been changed since they originally did it. And it's a little bit different. And let's just say I would not recommend it. No.
It's a little different hunk of junk then, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different hunk of junk now.
Okay.
you cannot beat the Reed aftermarket case at all, whether it's a Power Glider or 400. The fit and finish and the quality of their product is superior. It's the best one out there. And, ATI has a nice case. I think JW makes one. I've never really seen one. I don't think I've ever ordered one, but I would push the Reed stuff because it's just really, Reed has actually been bought out just recently. There's a converter company called Circle D Specialties. They're down in Texas. They actually bought Reed Racing and they're moving the facility to Texas. And I checked into it, and it'll definitely be the same quality that it was when Dennis Reed owned it out in California. So
that's cool. So hey, hang with the technical stuff here for a minute, Flip. Let's talk about converter charge pressure and that sort of thing, and because you brought it up just a minute ago, talking about how you can control that with dumps and charge pressure. So if, talking to our audience here, because a lot of people are saying, man, it's a great conversation, keep this going. So what would you recommend with something like that on a turbo car or blower car?
Well, it works best in a turbo car, just for the simple fact that, like a basic dump valve is going to be used for spooling purposes. There's so many factors that are involved in it, not just having a dump valve or, a way to actually spool the thing faster on the starting line. You got to have the right converter too. I mean, that's a key player. If you, I don't care whose converter you run, if it doesn't have the right stator pump combination in it for your application, you can try any and every dump you want to, and it's never going to work correctly. So a converter is a key player, is more of a key player than anything. Because I'll just give you an example. I had a customer quite a few years ago that had a turbo LS deal in a Chevy truck, like a full-size half-ton Chevy pickup. Had an off-brand converter in it, older. Oh, I can't remember exactly whose it was. It doesn't matter. But he put this thing together. He took it out to the racetrack. It would take almost 10 to 12 seconds for this thing to make 6 or 8 pounds of boost on the starting line. I mean, it was forever. And the whole time he's doing this, the transmission fluid is turning black and it just barbecuing everything. So we got him into the right converter, took it to the racetrack with no dumps, no nothing, took it out to the racetrack, and he spooled this thing to 10 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds in 4 seconds just by changing torque converters. The truck went from running like 1020s to 980s, within a week's time. So, converter is definitely a key player for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. But
so let me interrupt you. So you just talked about burning up the fluid there. What's your recommendation if a turbo guy burns his fluid up, during the race? Can he just change it? Does he need to look at the clutches?
Maintenance is a big key player. I've got people that have turbo applications that change their fluid after every pass. Some guys change, fluid after every race.
That guy.
Yeah. I had a customer.
Wherever you're at. I think you're over there.
I had a customer I did a freshen up for on a Power Glide here not too long ago. And he promised me that it was not a transmission that I built. It was just one that I freshened and repaired for him. He promised me that the transmission had 700 runs on it. And this was a turbo LS application. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. 700 runs on the same set of clutches, the same band. It's a Power Glide. And he promised me it had 700 runs on it. And I took it apart, and the higher clutches in it were burnt. Band was burnt. But he told me that he changes the oil in his deal after every race, and sometimes at the race. So, yeah, that white car. Yeah, maintenance is a key player.
It's cheap.
Yeah, it's just I don't care. There's not a magic fluid out there. There's some that's better than others, but there's nothing that you're going to be able to change, and this all of a sudden overnight it's just going to be, I'm going to get 50 runs out of this thing where I have to change it. No, that's not possible. It's just you know, whether it's a hydraulic oil or compressor oil or just a conventional ATF, you've got to stay on top of it, especially in a turbo car, because they're just so hard on parts, you know, as far as heat wise goes anyway. So, I mean, just like I don't know if you guys saw the videos that Steve Morris put out with Marty's billet steel converter and that turbo application of his, you know,
Yep.
honking 190 bazillion millimeter turbo or whatever it is he has on that wagon. You know, he turned that billet steel converter purple in 3 or 4 runs, you know. So it's maintenance, big key player for sure. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing's bulletproof. I mean, I don't care what it is. You're going to break something eventually. You know, I have a sign on my wall over here that says race it, break it, fix it, repeat. You know, so it's nothing lasts forever. I mean, so consumable parts will be consumed after a certain amount of time. So
sure. So what kind of pressure do we want?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Rob?
What kind of charge pressure do we want?
It just depends on your application. Depends on your converter. Depends on your car. You know, a lot of times when you're going to the starting line, when you're starting to spool, depending on what kind of valve you got, how it's adjusted, whether it's a turbo car, single turbo, twin turbo, I don't care what it is. Everything, all applications are different. So, you know, it's just one of those deals to where you have to get it in the car, get some runs, get some data, and see what it likes. You know, you have a starting point. Usually converter charge pressures that you're looking at. Like a run, not a run of the mill. I don't want to say run of the mill, but like a single turbo deal, kind of like your deal, Rod. You know, if you're looking at converter charge pressures that leaving the starting line around 80 psi, you know, 100 maybe. Not once you start getting up above 100, that's a little bit too much. But and you know, some guys will dump that fluid going down the racetrack at the same time too, just depending on their operating system they have, or if they have that capability of dumping oil down the racetrack. So, but usually on a starting line situation, you know, a good starting point is somewhere between 80 to 100 psi. But like I said, every application is different. So it's just something that has to be played with. That's the magic of data loggers. You know, if you can data log pressures, data log line pressure, you know, because the mainline pressure is different than converter charge pressure. So it's not as big of a player, but you still like to see what it's doing. If you had a sensor on the transmission that data logged mainline pressure and you made 10, 20 runs, and all of a sudden you notice that mainline pressure was no longer 200 psi, for example. It was now 180. You'll know, well, maybe we got something going on here. Maybe we've got a pump wearing out, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So that's a good idea to monitor that too, just for the simple fact that it can save a transmission from being catastrophically wounded before it actually is. So.
Oh, that's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yep. I used to use Caterpillar fluid in my transmission, and I had the converter out at Marty one time, and it stunk horrible. He said, I have never smelled a converter, and it wasn't, I didn't like cook it real bad. It's just I had it to him to change the stator, and he's like, what is this fluid? I've never smelled something this bad. I said, well, that's Caterpillar T4 fluid or whatever. And he goes, you need to use what Rodney's using. His never smells this bad. Well, I'll find out what Rodney's, because he knows Rodney puts a whipping on the converter and the fluid, and he's religious on maintenance. And so I asked Rodney, what are you using? And it's the John Deere stuff. So I got away from the stinky Caterpillar and went to John Deere.
John Deere High Guard, the low viscosity, it's good stuff to use. Another good oil, you know, like I said before, there's not a magic oil, but another good oil to use is AMSOIL makes a compressor oil that is made for, you know, industrial type air compressors.
Yeah.
They make I think it's a 10 weight and a 20 weight, but it has a flash point of 520 degrees before it'll actually start boiling it or barbecuing it. And it's really good stuff. I mean, I've seen that stuff, be in a turbo application like that and last more than 30 runs and not burn itself up. It's a clear fluid, so it's kind of hard to see on a stick. Sometimes you have to pour a little, like just regular ATF in it, just a little bit, just to get some color to it. But I've seen good results from it. That's just, one thing I'd recommend. That Valvoline also made some stuff too called, I think it was Unitrack, I believe is what it was called. And it had a high flash point to it also. It was good stuff. I think it's a little harder to get, but definitely like
Troy.
the compressor roll.
Yep.
Perfect.
Troy. Yes. Yeah. Troy Aves just chimed in. He said the one part I have to yet to worry about comes from Flip. He's talking about Flip is the man with the tranny. He says Valvoline hydraulic, he suggested, has worked wonders, and that's what he uses in his Power Glide.
It's good stuff. And Troy runs a Power Glide, and I think he's had really good luck with it. So now that he's building this new motor, though, I mean, he might start breaking stuff. It's going to be, I think that deal's going to be a powerhouse.
Yes, it will.
Hope so.
Yep.
Yep.
It'll be cool.
So, we talked earlier, Flip, so nobody listening will know that this is not a surprise or anything. But I want to switch gears for a little bit and talk a little bit about Kevin, if that's okay.
Sure.
And just for myself, I got a quick story. When I lived over on Juneau Court, David Gray lived the cul-de-sac behind me. And so, I would jump my fence to go to David Gray's house. And then, of course, Kevin lived right next to David Gray. And so we would be in the shop all the time, talking when Dave got his shop going, when he had the Chevelle. Just had a lot of great memories talking to your brother in that shop. And one of my best stories I can think of is he just said, he was asking me, he goes, Rod, is your wife, is she okay with you racing? And that was just like a question. I'm like, oh, yeah, she supports it, she lets me go out in the garage. She lets me, spend a little money. She's not going to be out there when it's 100 degrees outside. But, she supported that deal. And I just remember that was the last conversation I had with him. And I just remember it. So, everybody loves your brother. Everybody loves you, your family, doing it. You're really good stuff here, Flip.
But I miss my brother a lot. He's been gone 15 years now, and we were pretty much inseparable when we'd go to the racetrack. A lot of people may not know this or remember this, but I actually worked in the tower at the racetrack. It was around 2005, 6, 7 area. I was an announcer for a couple of years out there, and my brother would be up in the tower with me, helping call out numbers on the bracket races and typing in car numbers and so whatever else needed to be done other than the person that was running the computer. And we had a lot of good times up there in that tower. It's there's some stories I can tell and some stories I can't tell, but we had good times. Kevin was killed in 2008 by an impaired driver, and my niece Whitney is Kevin's daughter. She's involved with the DUI Victim Center of Kansas. It's a nonprofit organization that helps victims of DUI accidents or impaired driving accidents. Just helps families out with support. They have fundraisers for different activities. Last September, we put on a memorial car show for my brother. It's the first time that we had done this. Just kind of never had really put a car show on before. We used to be in a car club for quite a few years. It was called Muscle Inc. My brother had a 73 Dodge Charger that was a back half Pro Street type car. And anyway, we put this car show on, and I was completely overwhelmed and just could not believe we had almost 50 cars show up to the car show that day, and they raised over $2,600 that went to the DUI Victim Center. it was just a really good time. We really enjoyed it, and our family has decided that we're going to make it an annual thing, and it's something. The DUI Center is something that not only Whitney is passionate about, my whole family is, just because of the circumstances, because they're good people. The panels that they put on for people who have gotten DUIs that puts out a message that says, if you want to drink, that's your business. It's fine. We're not saying don't drink. We're just saying don't get behind the wheel of a car when you're drinking something, or if you're under the influence of whatever it is. And so we're going to do that car show again this year, this coming September. I think we've already got a date scheduled for September 21st, I believe, on a Saturday. It's just it's a fun time. You know, my brother was a car nut just like I was. You know, he worked for Davis Moore organization for almost 27 years. He was a parts manager at the Chevy dealership, and like I said, just loved cars just as much as I did. Love racing. Kevin was a big supporter of the track back years ago when Davis Moore would put up money for big money races. They would help sponsor a lot of stuff, and just really, really love the sport. So, yeah, we're going to do another car show to raise some more money for the DUI Center. So put it on your calendar. If you got a hot rod and you want to have a fun day, and we'll have door prizes and raffles and giveaways and food trucks and music and all kinds of good stuff. So
that was my next, and I just peeked at my calendar, like, you know, September 21st, I seen it there, and would be like, do you get race cars that show up where, you know, you're always supporting the racetrack, and like, we're small tire guys, you're always supporting what we're doing in the racetrack and stuff. And maybe, you know, we should show you some love back and support what you're doing also. Yeah.
If it's got 4 wheels and a motor in it, bring it. Last year we had all kind of, you know, we had hot rods and street rods, and one of my customers brought his mud truck up there, and Mike Buchanan, a good family friend of ours, has a funny car. He brought it up there, and just had a good time. You know,
where's the location at, Flip?
We had it. I think we're gonna have the same place, but it's the Derby North Middle School, right at basically Rock Road and Rock Road, just back to the north of 63rd Street there.
Okay, not too far.
Yep.
That's good. Put it on your calendars, everybody. Remember that in September. I'll support Flip. He supports us. That's what racing's all about.
And I'm excited about Wichita opening back up this year. It's, you know, I've said before, and I know Rod, you and I have talked about this. You know, when I did some sponsorship and put some money up for you guys' last few races towards the end of last year at Arc City, and these racetracks are dying everywhere, you know, and we as a community, I believe, have to keep supporting these places to keep them open, not just because of our hobby and our enjoyment of it, but for our next generations too. Because you look at these younger kids, like you guys had Shane and Brendan Mock on the other night, and I got to thinking about when Brendan was a kid and he was driving that junior dragster, and now he's in a car that running 170 mile an hour on a small tire, and the kid can drive. He's a good driver.
In the 8th mile.
Yeah, in the 8th mile. And he's a good kid too. You know, you look at all the younger generation, not just him, but like the Wheeler family, like Dan Wheeler and his boys, Colton and Carson. Those kids are studs. They go to a bracket race, and I guarantee you they're in the finals or semifinals pretty much almost everywhere they go, every time they go somewhere. But that is where they start that young racing experience when they put them in a junior dragster, and these kids turn into just excellent drivers. I don't care what kind of racing it is. I don't care if they're bracket racing, heads up racing, I don't care what it is. We have to keep these places alive for these kids too, because And I will support everything I can when I can, whether it's Arc City, Wichita, I don't care. I mean, you guys' program with your Heads Up series, I would like to, I plan on putting signs up at Arc City and Wichita both, and I would like to maybe support some kind of big money bracket race coming up here at Wichita or Arc City both. Just throw a little money in the pot, to try to get some cars to show up. If you have a big money bracket race and you pay it, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to win or something, guys are going to go to that. They'll show up. So, I'll talk with Chris Maybrier. I'll talk with Kenny Alt and definitely want to try to put something together, because everybody who has ever supported me in the last 30 years of my career, I definitely want to give back, because it's just something that I'm passionate about. I've enjoyed, whether I'm racing or not, it doesn't matter. I just enjoy the sport, and I want to see it continue for sure. So.
We appreciate that for sure, because it take that, from the businesses, keep it going,
Absolutely.
And you're, with people listening here live with us and you, when this, and I'm going to use the Heads Up stuff because that's what we do.
Right.
You was the first person to reach out and offer what it is you offered. Nobody reached to you begging. You reached out and offered first, and that's a big deal. And your support is super, super appreciated.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. And I just, like I said, I don't want to see it die. I don't want to see it go away. I know, like, Topeka closed because of whatever circumstance it was. I get that. Just example, Houston Raceway Park, they tore that place down the day after they had their last race, because somebody bought the property. Atlanta, Georgia track, Vandermeer's done. I'm assuming they're going to build a new facility, but now that Great Bend is closed, and I don't know the whole circumstance on that deal, but I mean, that track has so much history and so much support from the people who live in that area that it's just horrible to see that place closed down because of the history it has. I mean, the first ever national event ever held was held at that facility. So, but I'm glad that Wichita is opening back up, and I hope that it will continue for as long as it can anyway. So,
and piggybacking off what Gary just said about putting up the funds, another thing that just wanted to share about you is on your service side, because, I've texted myself just talking about me, getting parts or needing something. I mean, heck, at the last event, you were in my pits just hanging for the day. And to me, that's just being supportive if I need anything, or anybody else in that area. If they would have needed anything, you were trackside service for that day. And so just hats off to you. I know everybody appreciates that.
Thank you. I appreciate that too. Yeah. I try to be at the racetrack as much as I can. It just, with owning my own business and working for myself now full time, it's kind of hard to break away sometimes, but I try to be there as much as possible. It's not, I used to go all the time, Another shout out to my wife for hanging with me all these years, because she didn't know I ever liked to go to the racetrack unless I was racing something. So
sure, that makes sense.
These wives put up with a lot of
yes, they do. Yes,
from racing car guys.
They're troopers for sure. So if you got one that's supportive of it and stays with you, she's the keeper for sure. So
yes.
So Flip, like we talked about before, you kind of just started it out. Let's just go ahead and give you the floor as far as, people have helped you along the way. And while you're doing that, I want Gary to check out the comments. If anybody has a question, now's the time, because we're getting to the back end of the show. Any last minute questions for Flip or any kind of support, and thank you. But Flip, officially the floor is yours, just to kind of give shout outs to people who have helped you throughout your career, racing or otherwise.
There's a lot of people, and I will probably forget some, but the ones that stand out the most to me, of course, Neil Chance. He's the reason I got into this industry, in this business. My like I told you at the beginning, the family friend of ours that introduced me to him back in the early 80s, if it wasn't for him, I never probably would have ever got into this at all, ever. And I mean, there's no telling what route I would have went because I was just a kid. But him for sure, and Marty Chance. I cannot thank Marty Chance enough for the stuff that he's done for me in the last 30 years with anything that I've ever needed. He's always been there for me, no matter what. Supported me, helped me, give me advice. He's like a brother, another like a second brother. My family for sure. My parents, my dad. My dad was a hard worker. Like I said, he worked at Wichita Fire Department for 20 years. And if anybody knows anything about the fire department, they work a 24-hour on, 48-hour off shift. So the days that my dad was off of the fire department, he had part-time jobs on top of that. My dad was a workaholic. He worked hard, and he entailed that into me and my brother both. And, I passed it on to my kids, and you're never going to get anywhere unless you work for it. Nobody's going to give you anything for free. Money don't grow on trees type of situation. For sure, my parents for pushing me, to do whatever it is I decided to do. I didn't go to, like I said, I didn't go to college. I graduated from high school, and it was right to work. That's just the way I wanted to do it. I just wanted to go to work. And for sure him, another key person that has helped me out here in the last 10, 12 years. His name is John Hutchison. He owns a transmission shop in London, Ontario, Canada. It's called Hutch's Transmission Service. I don't know if you guys ever remember getting on Yellow Bullet.
Yes.
He had a forum on Yellow Bullet, and he would answer questions. And he's got some stuff on Facebook too. He does a DIY transmission building page. I can't remember exactly what it is. But John Hutchison I have never physically stood in front of this man and shook his hand, but I talk to him all the time. And he has never hesitated to give me advice, give me help. I buy parts from him sometimes. If I ever have a question and I send him a text message, he may not respond right away, but he definitely gets back to me, and we talk a lot on, through texting and stuff. He is definitely a key person that has helped me out. Like I said, my family too, my wife for putting up with me for 25 years and the hard work and all the hours being away and, trying to balance out doing stuff with her and work at the same time. Doug Bumgardner.
Red.
We'll go back 25 years, maybe more. Actually more, probably 30 years. Has always been somebody who I could count on to help me with stuff if I needed it. I actually worked out of his house at one time for a while. I was in between shops, had moved out of one shop I was in, didn't have another place I could go to, and temporarily worked out of his house. Had a couple other buildings, and then later on when he started his own business on South Washington, I worked out of his shop for 7-8 years, something like that, until I bought my place out here I'm at now. But another person who is a brother to me. Red's one of those type of guys that if you called him at 3:00 in the morning and said, "I need you," he'd be there, no matter what. And I cannot thank him enough for everything he's ever done for me. He's just, and always will be a close friend.
Yeah.
The Long family at Chance Transmissions, they've, all the years I worked for them, I appreciate everything they ever did for me. Completely, 100%, Dave Long and his kids. just there's probably other people, like I said, and I'm not thinking of them right off the top of my head, and I apologize if I forget you, but just all my friends, all the people who have been my customers for years. Oh, it's one thing I was going to tell you guys, in case you didn't know this, and I wanted to give him a shout out too. The business name, the Flipomatic Racing Transmissions, where that came from was from Toby Chaffin.
Ah.
When he first started racing back in the late 80s, early 90s, I can't remember exactly what year it was. He had an old Chevy 2 back aft car. It was the first race car he ever had. He was one of the first guys I ever built a race power glide for locally here, other than just what I did at work. And if you look at a GM transmission like a Turbo 400, if it has a stamping on the bottom of the pan that says Hydro-Matic, the division of GM. That's on a Turbo 400 pan, and the old early 60s automatic transmissions were called Hydro-Matics. One day Toby just came up with that. He said, well, you're Flip, so let's call it a Flip-O-Matic. And that has stuck ever since then. I mean, it's just
cool.
That's where it started. Toby is a good friend, has been for years, and always been a customer, supporter of mine. And that's another person that I thank also.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's going on, Gary? Some people chime in. Have anything to say to Flip?
Whitney brought something up here a while back. Is there a story with this? Tell the time about farting into Neil's car right before he went down the track. What happened there?
Neil, his old Corvette, not the funny car body, but the one with the doors on it, the black colored body. When you put the window net up on that car, he could not reach up. When he was belted in the car tight, he could not reach up and release that window net. He couldn't reach the latch or however it was set up to release it. So I would strap him in a car and I would pull his belts down, kind of tight. And then he would, once he got into the water box car, he did his burnout, he would tighten him up a little bit more. But I always popped the window net up and then would stand there and kind of hold the door open, give him some fresh air or whatever. And one day, I think we were out at Wichita. He was just getting ready to make a hit, and he was like the next car to start up and pull around. And I had gas really bad, and I reached around in there and blasted one off in the car, and I shut the door. Well, he couldn't open when the window net was up, he couldn't open the door either. And man, he was open the door. He was screaming, and I can't breathe in here. But here's where karma goes into play. I'm in the staging lanes one night at Wichita, and probably I think it was next pair to run, and the same situation. I had the window net up, the door shut, and all of a sudden my passenger door in my Vega pops open, and I turned my head and I look, and he's standing there, and he did the exact same thing to me, and then shut the door. So
oh man,
that was a payback. He did that a lot. Yeah.
We got some more stuff to get here real quick. Sean Kwasniewska is a buddy in Salina. Sean, stay on here till we get to your comment, because I'm going to throw that question at Flip. It is a technical question, and we're going to get to it. But I also want to put this up here. Whitney says, and this was talking about the car show, and it's talking about flyers. Flip and I will share the flyer in the group. And when flyers get out and that deal starts getting advertised, we'll get a picture of the flyer and put with our deal here, and we can get that flyer up as it gets closer, and we can help support that deal too. And
cool. Appreciate that, guys. Yeah.
And if we got a car that runs, then I'm going to go hang out on the 21st at a car show.
It don't even have to run. You can push it in.
Yes, it does. It needs to run. It's a street car, and I may even drive it.
That's right. That's a street car. Yeah.
So when you get a flyer for that, let us get a hold of a flyer, or we'll see it on Facebook or whatever. But
absolutely,
be sure and get that seen.
Absolutely.
The middle school.
Yep.
Let me get to Sean's question here.
Okay.
This is my buddy Sean in Salina. I bought my car from. It's actually the red car I have. It used to be white.
Okay.
He says, is it worth building a 4L60E trans to handle about 500 horsepower to be a daily driver? I do the drag week cruising stuff. What way should I go? Thanks.
I'm going to say no.
And this is an LS. I'm pretty sure I know what vehicle he's got. He has a pickup truck with an LS. It has been naturally aspirated. I don't know if he's maybe going to toss a little turbo on it, but
the reason I say that is because the 4L60E, it's a decent transmission. It does have its problems, especially with hydraulics and some of the circuitry on it. There is several things you can do to change all that, to do a lot of fixing. You can throw a whole bunch of parts at a 4L60E that are aftermarket, but it's still a 4L60E when it's all said and done with. I have done quite a few swaps on. This would be in like a Chevy truck, but taking a 4L60E out of a early to mid to later 2000s Chevy pickup and swapping a 4L80, and it's not that hard to do. Nowadays doing conversions on stuff, you can pretty much buy anything bolt something right back in. People make engine mounts, transmission cross members, drive shaft stuff. So it's easy to do as long as you've got the right way to do computer work, or have somebody who can do the resegmenting for you, which I have somebody who does that for me. But I would, if you're going to do a drag and drive type car and you want to drive something on the highway, I would suggest to do a 4L80, just for the simple fact that a 4L80 is a turbo 400 with overdrive, and you can still put some power to those and not hurt anything. So I would suggest a 4L80, for sure.
Yep. I know a handful of guys that in the drag and drive community that use the 4L80, and they're, a single turbo LS making, 1,000 and something, whether it's 11, 12, right, 13, 14, and it works very well.
Yeah. They do work well as long as you put the correct parts in them, you work right. If you're going to do that in the overdrive community or the overdrive type situation, then that's your best bet. The ultimate is to put a turbo 400 and the gear vendors behind it, but a lot of times people don't have that kind of budget to do that because the gear vendors is expensive. And a lot of times gear vendors won't fit in certain cars. You have to hack a floorboard up on a certain vehicle, just depending on what it is, to get it to fit right. And some guys don't want to do that.
Mod.
Yeah. Some guys don't want to hack a floorboard up and try to make something to fit, but
and Sean says it'll be a naturally aspirated 6-liter LS.
Yeah. It's still that I would recommend a 4L80 for sure. So, and those things are they're out there. You can find those cores. They're expensive, but I mean, what's the old commercial? Fram filters. You can pay me now or pay me later. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Ray Burns, he says, Flip saved race week 2 years ago for me. Found a snap ring in the fluid 2 days before race week, and Flip got me fixed up. Great guy.
Yeah. We went through some stuff with race car. Had a few issues, but we got them all ironed out finally. But I remember that. Yeah. Ray's a good guy.
And Troy's talking about him and I driving our cars to the Derby Car Show.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
That's a date, Troy. Let's do it. Gas it up. Let's go.
For sure.
I should have my stuff back together by then.
I hope so.
Better.
Things a garage ornament needs to get out.
Man.
See the sun.
Yeah. Ron Rich. He says, I know anytime I call Flip, he answers the phone every time I have called him. I give him props for that. He has built every Tran I have ever built since our Massey passed away.
Yeah, Rooker Massey. Yeah, Rooker was a good guy. He was a good guy for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Ron.
And this was Sean asking about the 4L60. He says, "Will do. Thanks, guys, for the info." Thanks for watching, Sean.
Yeah.
Thanks for chiming in and asking Flip.
Yeah. If you have any questions, just give me a call.
And you and I was talking the other night, and you said something about a C4, kind of the first time we met, and I think that C4 came out of his car when it was a C4 with one of Shannon's old, old converters, and I had talked Sean into selling the S-trim blower and let me put a turbo on it.
Yeah.
And then I got a C4 and it got out of hand, and
yeah,
you know how it goes.
Oh yeah, sure. You change one thing, and then the next thing you know, you're changing 12 things. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're dumb. Whitney says, "What's that?"
You do it for the love of the sport.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Whitney says, "One of my first memories as a child was sitting in the passenger side of the Vega as Flip took me down the track. He took me all the way down the track, and I could barely see out the window. Ha ha."
Yeah, I think it was it was a Saturday bracket race, and I was just warming the car up, driving it around, and I think I just idled it down the racetrack, and she was sitting in the passenger seat. She was just a little tyke. Yep.
Keith Lopez. He says, "Flip has been my race transmission builder for 23 years now. When we first met, he built the C4 that went in my Ford freaking Ranger. He also took the time to introduce me to Marty and Neil Chance when I was new to Wichita and the racing scene."
Yeah, I remember that Ford Ranger pickup Keith had. That thing was cool. It was really neat deal. Yeah, I appreciate that, Keith. Keith's been a good friend for a long time, good customer.
Yep, he's a good dude.
Now he's doing that buzzing half dozen stuff, and that's really cool, in my opinion.
Yes, that's going to go 8s next year.
That's fast for a farm implement. So
yeah, for an irrigation well,
irrigation motor. Yeah.
For watering the corn.
There you go. Yeah, that thing's really cool.
Yep. Awesome.
There used to be a guy that bracket or drag. He raced out at Wichita back in the 80s. His name was Larry Saker. He had an altered, like funny car chassis, altered body on it, and then he always ran a 6-cylinder Chevrolet. And it said, if I remember right, it was lettered on the side of it. It said buzzing half dozen.
Yeah.
I think every time he took that car down the racetrack, it hurt something in the motor because it, talk about RPM and something. Whew.
Yeah.
Sound like a super stock motor going down the racetrack at 10,000 RPM. So.
Yep. Brett Lobel says Flip's a good dude.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it. Brett's been a good friend, family friend. He was a good friend of my brother for years. We used to be in the car club together for a long time.
Kurt says Flip has been with me since Nitrous and then the Pro Charger Chevelle and the Corvette. Yep.
I have known Kurt Riffle for many, many years. He's another one of those people that I forgot and should have mentioned, but just like a brother to me. He's always been there for sure.
And Toby Chaffin, did you say he's the originator of your name?
Yeah.
Flip-O-Matic.
That is for sure. Yep.
Awesome.
We used to have some good times, Toby and I did. We'd go racing. We went to, I'll tell you a little story. Toby had a first-gen Camaro car. It was actually one of the cars that J.R. Sandlin owned back when he was bracket racing. It was 67, I believe, Camaro. Had a alcohol hat injected big block Chevrolet in it, and we went to Thunder Valley Raceway in Noble for a Saturday bracket race. It was around Halloween time. It was late in the season, and we get there and we unload the car, and he goes up and makes to make a time trial. He lets go of the button, and the car gets about 60 foot out, and it blows a transmission cooler line off of the transmission. It pulled it right out of the fitting. and Toby didn't know that had happened, and he drove that car all the way down the racetrack, and it's spraying transmission fluid from 60 foot to the end of the shutdown area, basically. So, of course, it pumped all the fluid out of it, and I had to go down there. We had to tow the car back. They spent probably an hour and a half, maybe even longer, I don't know, cleaning that up. And we pulled the car back to the pits. We fixed it all. We fixed the line. We put fluid back in the transmission. And we were going to go up because they were going to go ahead and just start. We got there late, so we only got that one time trial. And they were going to go ahead and start first round. So we were going to just go up there, put a number on it, and go. And it started raining. And it rained the race out. And I tell you what, we loaded that car up and left, and everybody was looking at us as we were driving out the gate. They were all ready to kill us, I think, because they had to wait so long, and then it rained the race. We're pulling out of the gate going, sorry, guys, we didn't mean to. Wow. Then we were going to go to Arc City on Sunday and race. And like I said, this was the end of October. So we drive to somewhere. I think we was right around that little town, Bremen, Oklahoma. They used to have a little truck stop there, had a little motel. We got a room for the night. We stayed in that room. We got up the next morning, and we're going to go to Arc City. As soon as we walked out of the hotel, it was snowing. And we just went home. We actually went to the racetrack because there were some people there, but there was no way they were going to race in the snow. So that was a one-pass weekend of racing. That was about it. So
here's another shout out from Jamie Blueball.
Jamie Blueball. He says, I met Flip years ago when my trans was broken. Marty was going to fix it, but he was getting married and didn't have time. So Flip fixed it for me. I'm not sure what that year might have been. Flip probably remembers.
I don't either, Jamie. That's been a long time ago. Long time ago. I first met him. Yeah. Shots fired. I first met Jamie, and I actually worked for, I don't know if you guys remember Keith Goolsby. I don't know if you guys know that name or not. Yeah. He had a transmission shop in Wichita, and I actually worked for him for about a year or so back in the early 90s when I had left Chance the first time. And I met Jamie through him when I worked for Keith. Jamie and his brother had a orange first-gen Camaro that they drove on the street. And that's where I first met Jamie. Yeah.
Very cool.
What about shots fired? What's going on?
Shots fired, yeah. Okay. This is something that got took. This is a story that Neil took to the grave with him and never fessed up to. And I'll try to make it short as possible. We used to go to Tulsa a lot, once a year, and race their spring nationals they had. And it would usually always rain every time we'd go up there in the early spring for that race. So we go up there. At the time, Neil had a trailer that was kind of had an RV in the front of it, and then just a little place where the car went in the back of it. And he would stay at the racetrack in this little RV trailer he had. Well, it got kind of chilly that night, and we decided to go ahead and we'd go get a motel room. And Neil decided he'd do the same instead of staying out the track because it was a little bit chilly. So he got a room a couple of doors down from ours. It was me and two other guys that were in one room. And I was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Somebody starts pounding on our motel room door. And I kind of barely opened one eye, and what's going on there? And all of a sudden I hear, Tulsa police, open the door now. I was like, we're sound asleep. Kept banging on the door. So it was Eddie Jump was one of them. He was sleeping on the floor. He got up and went over and opened the door. And these 2 police officers were standing there, and they pushed the door open and barreled in the room and started shining flashlights in our face going, you boys all right in here? We heard, we had reports of gunshots coming from this room. I looked up at him and I says, does it look like we're shooting guns? I'm sound asleep, laying here in my underwear, sound asleep, So they said, oh, we just want to make sure everything was okay because there were a gunshot report. So they leave, and I'm laying there in bed. We're me and Eddie and the other guys were talking. Like, what the hell was that all about? And I said, I know exactly what this was all about. Neil, he would kind of get nervous before a race day sometimes, and he probably couldn't sleep. So he didn't have nothing else better to do. Back to the practical joke part of it. He probably called the cops on us and told them that he heard gunshots coming out of our room and sent the police up. Well, the next morning we get up and we're going to go to breakfast, and he calls our room. He goes, "You guys up? You guys ready to go eat?" And first words out of my mouth when I got on the phone, I said, "Did you call the cops on us last night?" And his response was, "Well, whatever do you mean?"
Guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just imagine. So, and he never fessed up to it, but he would always laugh about it anytime the subject was brought up. So he took that to the grave with him. I'm pretty sure he called the police on us that night just for a practical joke. So.
That's great.
Oh man, that's great stuff. Awesome.
Something I'll never forget.
So appreciate you coming on. I can see, I think Gary went through all the comments and nothing new has come this way. We appreciate supporting us. We just want to say openly as the whole community, we appreciate everything you do for us. And, and all the hard work. And I know just myself, I use, your service and that sort of thing for parts or technical advice and your customer service. So appreciate that. You're one of the legends around here. Being serious for a second, you took that from Neil, and you're moving forward with that. We want you to know that, that we look at you now as that person, and so just keep doing what you're doing. You're so humble, and we appreciate you. And so you'll be the next one people will talk about.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. Anybody has any questions on anything or needs anything done, just give me a holler. I may not always answer the phone, but you can always leave a message and I'll get back to you. I'm a busy person. So
right on.
Yeah, I appreciate
it. And something I want to say is I listen to podcasts at work all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's two types of podcasts. It's racing podcasts or military stuff. That's special forces, special operator guys. And in one of the podcasts, the guys I listen to, I think it's Mike Ritland's podcast. He was a Navy SEAL. He has a great podcast. And he said one time, talking to these Iraq veterans and the Afghanistan guys, he said, and this makes me think of you talking about Neil. Mike says these stories need to be told, and they're locked into this podcast format like this. They're locked in forever. And telling them stories is great because they need to be told. People need to tell the stories. Yeah. And when all of us are gone, them stories will still be there. And your stories with Neil, that stuff's locked in now. Anybody from down the road now, they can catch these stories and re-listen to this stuff and hear the stories of your experiences with Neil and the stuff you guys did together.
Absolutely.
So, we really, really appreciate your time and telling these stories it's great.
I for 40 years, just wonderful experiences, getting to go places, I've never had been before. We didn't go all over the country when we raced together, but we went Missouri, Oklahoma, been to Texas, a couple different times when I was a kid. We went to Temple and Wichita Falls, and I think went to Amarillo once. And Neil used to race years and years ago, even before he had the Corvette. He had an old, they called it a Kellison. It was a Kellison bodied car, and it had a small block in it with I think it was a 4-speed car. The stories I remember him telling, but he used to race down at a track called Green Valley Raceway in Texas, and told me stories about those early years that he raced. And I always cherish those because this stuff I can tell my kids and my grandkids, and that's the neat thing about technology is, like you said, people can go back and look at this and and know where people came from and where they grew up at and how they got involved in this sport, So
yep.
I will definitely continue to support you guys and support racing as much as I can for sure, because it's been good to me, and a lot of people have been good to me as well. So,
well, and everybody watching or people watch this later and want to get a hold of Flip, the information's there. It's on the advertisement for the podcast to get his name, number, and so we just want to say thanks. Thanks for everybody coming in. You got a little banner going across here for you now.
I forgot about that. I'm not doing my job over here.
All right. And Flip, we'll go ahead and call it a show for you. If you have anything else, I have one last thing I'm going to say, just a plug for us. But Gary, do you have anything else?
I don't. No, man, Flip, thank you so much for taking the time, a couple hours out of your evening tonight. And we knew this was going to be great. We knew it was going to be fun with you, and it for sure was. You didn't let us down at all. Great stuff.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I hope everybody had a good time, and appreciate you having me on, and hope this continues. You guys are doing a great job with this podcast deal, and I really enjoy it immensely. I love watching everything. Excited to see what's coming up for sure. So,
all right, we'll talk about it. So, before we go into the next guest, I do want to just to give a shout for us. So go to our profile, go to YouTube, like, subscribe, our Heads Up Racing, Gary and HotRod podcast. You know, we just keep growing that. We tried this new format this week with 4 profiles going. So we have a couple of different phones and computers going here, so we can see who all's chatting and what's going on there. So we just want to keep growing it. We want to thank all the sponsors that came in. And keep us going. You know, like we talked about last week, we have enough resources now for all of 2024. So we appreciate that. Just like, racers helping racers here, get back to these businesses. So talking about next week, we're going back to Sunday. So back to Sunday at 7:00. We're going to switch it up and do a little no time. We're going to have someone you guys probably heard of. I call him DK. He's known as Derek Kelly. And you might know the car Bam Bam or Dr. Evil, but we've talked to him a couple times. Yeah, I think people know Gary and I went to his class last year, and so we got a great relationship with him. And we saw him at PRI and asked once, and he said absolutely. And so we'll have him on next Sunday, and he says sky's the limit to talk about. So anybody want to come on and know a little bit about Derek Kelly, please tune in next Sunday at 7:00. That's all I got.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun next week. We good. They're all fun. Yeah, man. Yeah. Sit around and talk cars.
Yeah.
Cool.
We appreciate everybody's support. And I thank you again for support.
Thank you. Take care, and you guys have a happy new year, and I hope everyone has a very prosperous 2024 for sure. So,
yes,
sir.
All right.
Thank you, Flip. And you're the last guy for us for 2023.
Well, sweet.
All right.
All right. Take care, guys.
See you, Flip. Thanks a lot for your time.
You bet. Bye.
Bye. A few more people with some talking about the show. Scooter Rick, another great show. Thank you for watching, Scooter Rick. I wish I could remember your darn name. But
I just remember he had something, right?
What's that?
Well, he had a drill bit or some sort of bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's watching us again. Thank you. Whitney says best flipping show yet, and the longest too.
Yeah. Well, we had some good stories. You can't shut it down.
Yes.
You know what you were talking about. You don't want to keep these in a bottle. You got to release them.
That's right. Got to get it out there.
Yeah.
Shelly and Kurt, great job, man. Thank you, Shelly and Kurt. Dave Music says great show. Thank you, Dave.
Appreciate all the support, everybody.
Well,
and
someday we need to find out about this. Mitch Brown says the favorite is the Seminole story, but we're not going to tell that one.
Yeah, man. What's going on there? You know, they all used to live together. So it's, I was wondering with Mitch, Marty, and Flip, like who did the laundry? That's what I was thinking. Who did the cooking? I don't know. Or cleaning, right? That's pretty funny.
Yep. Funny stuff.
Good.
Yep.
Well, great show tonight, Gary. As always, I think we did pretty good. So we'll just keep it going. Excited for, I think we got 3 already lined up. And, we're going to do some no time. We're going to talk to some drag and drive. We're going to talk to some, also some no preps coming, and so we'll just keep this going. until everybody's getting ready for the track to come open, and we'll start racing and continue to have these live feeds every week. So
Yep.
if you can think of anything that you'd like to see different, or you want to give us some feedback, just hit us up. Everybody knows our Facebook, and you send us a message, and we continue. We love the support, and we appreciate any feedback, but the support has been overwhelming, and so we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And that's exactly what Chris Maybrower told me last week. He's like, just keep doing what you're doing.
Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep researching and trying to tweak the ends here and make it a better show every time. So
yeah, cool.
We're racers. We're not TV and IT and computer and graphic guys, but we're doing what we can.
You're pretty good though,
We're figuring it out.
We'll have to put that on our resume, podcast.
Yeah. Slash.
Yeah, right. Cool. All right, Gary.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Good job.
Yes, sir. You too. Thanks for your time tonight. And boom, give me one of those. Boom. I think you need it.
Boom. There you go.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And next Sunday, back on Sundays, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
And we haven't looked yet, pending on the Chiefs game time. We haven't even looked at that. I haven't even looked at it. So yeah, we'll you'll know. So all right. See you later, everybody.
All right.